Alright, so hopefully you're following along with me. We are doing the practice EOC Unit 1. So we're just going to kind of work through all the answers to the multiple choice questions. Alright, so number 1 was asking this question right here. Notice we've got an or and not an and. So we need to solve both of these inequalities separately and then just graph them on the number line. So with the one on the left here, we can start off by adding 10 to both sides. And we end up with 2x is less than negative 2. Divide both sides by the 2, and we get x is less than negative 1. We're going to stick our or down here. Now, with the one on the right, we need to subtract 4 from both sides. So now we've got negative 3x is less than or equal to negative 9. Here we need to divide both sides by negative 3. Remember, whenever we multiply or divide by a negative number in an inequality, we have to flip the inequality. So now we have x is greater than or equal to positive 3. So if we're going to look at the number line here, we know at negative 1, we'll say here's negative 1, we have an open circle and it's pointing to the left, so we shade that way. Then with the inequality on the right, we'll say here's 3, we have a closed circle because it's equal to, and we would shade to the right because it points to the right. So the answer that looks like that would be B in number 1. Alright, so let's take a look at number 2. So number 2 is asking what is the solution set of this absolute value inequality. Now remember, with absolute value inequalities, we need to break it apart into two inequalities. The first one we have is just the original inequality without the absolute value. The second one is when we have to flip the sign of everything that's on the other side of the absolute value. So 2x minus 4 stays the same. We flip the inequality and we change the sign of everything on the right. So now we can go ahead and solve both of these. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. We got 2x is greater than negative 2. Divide both sides by 2. We got x is greater than negative 1. Now with this one, we need to add 4 to both sides again. And we get, that's a 4. 2x is less than 10. Divide both sides by 2. We get x is less than 5. So now with absolute values, there's always the word and in here. So this is saying that x has to be greater than negative 1 and less than 5. So if we look at our options here, the one that represents that the best is, says negative 1 is less than x, which is x is less than 5. So that answer would be C. Okay, so now with number 3 we're going to use our calculators for, because this would just take way too long to solve by hand. So take a look at this. The first thing we need to do is set it up so we have all the variables represented in our problem. So we got 2x plus 1y, and we have no z's here, so 0z. Second, we've got 3x, no y's, and a negative 1z. And then the last one has all of them in there. So we'll put 1y plus 1z equals 2. So hopefully now you're remembering that we're going to have to go to the matrix option on our calculator. So let's switch over to a calculator, and we go second matrix. Second matrix. If this thing would actually work. Let's clear everything out. Second matrix. All right. Remember, we have to go over to edit first, and we have to put in those values. So I'm going to edit it on the first one. This one will be a 3 by 4. So now we can go down into the matrix and we can just type this in. So our coefficients were 2, and then we have a 1, and then a 0. Of course, I can't see my 0 here. So still can't see 0, barely though. Maybe we can get to it. All right, so let's see if we can put 0 in. All right, it worked. And then we have another 0. So now the next one, we've got a 3, 0, and negative 1. So 3, 0, negative 1. And it all equaled a 4. So let's put a 4 in there. And then the last one was 1, negative 1, 1. and it equaled 2. So hopefully you guys remember now we need to go to second quit, and then we go back to the matrix, and we're going to do the row reduced echelon form of this. So we go over to math, hit up to the B option, and we press enter on that, and we have to stick the matrix we just made back in there. So your second matrix, enter, close the parenthesis, good practice there. So now we can see that the very first one we have there is our x. So the x value is 1, the y value is -2, and the z value is -1. So this was asking for the y value. So our correct answer would be B. The y value is -2. Remember, that's telling you there's x, here's y because it's in the middle, and then here's z because it's at the end, alphabetical order. Good. All right, so for number 4, the first thing I did was I looked at the options for A, B, C, and D. I knew right off the bat that C and D are definitely not options for answers, because if you look at their shading, remember, they always have to be like underneath a line or above a line. They can't be above and below. So if you look at those, the shading kind of goes like this, like it covers in 2 sections. So this could not be an inequality because it's going below the line and above the line. It can only be on one or the other. So I know C and D definitely aren't correct. So I went through and I solved both of these for y. So I've got x plus 2y is less than or equal to 6. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. I got 2y is less than or equal to -x plus 6. Divide everything by 2. I got y is less than or equal to -1/2 x plus, it's a plus sign, 3. So now we look at both of these, and we know the line with a negative slope, it should be shaded below. So when we look at that, both lines with a negative slope are shaded below for A and B, so we have to continue on and solve the other inequality. So squeeze that one in here. 2x minus y is less than -2. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, and I got -y is less than -2x minus 2. I got to multiply everything by -1. So when I do that, y greater than, because it flips the inequality, 2x plus 2. So now I know the positive slope. We'll do right here, we'll say here's the positive slope line. It's saying it's got to be above it. And then the negative slope line, which we worked out in green, looks something like this, and it's saying it's got to be below it. So if we look at that, where these two things would overlap, it would be in this region right here. So the correct answer would be B. All right, good. All right, so number 5. Number 5, there's a lot going on here, but there's actually no work to be done. If you look at this, if you look at A, you'll see that one of those lines has shading above and below it, so you know that's not a correct answer. With B, there's multiple lines that have shading above and below them, so that's not an answer. And with D, the whole graph is shaded, so that's definitely not it. So the answer has to be C. But let's just go through and do this real quick to make sure we get it. So I'll do a real quick sketch of it. So we'll color code everything. So the first line will be green. So y is less than x. That goes through 0 up 1 over 1, so it would look like this. Less than means below that line. So right now we're everything below it. So now let's do y is greater than or equal to -3. So y is greater than or equal to -3 would be down 3, and this is where y equals -3. Notice these are all solid lines. So now greater than would be above it. So right now we're in this big triangle all the way through there. And the last one, we've got a y-intercept at 15. So we'll just say 15 is, we'll use a black for this, is way up here somewhere. And then we have to come slope of -5, down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1. So it's going to have kind of a steep slope that looks like this. And it is less than, so that means in here. So we should be able to see this triangle shaded. And that's exactly what C looks like. All right, number 6 said, write an inequality that represents this. So first off, this is an AND problem. The shading's in the middle. So should be thinking absolute value as soon as we see this. So the first thing we need to find is, where is the middle? Well, if we go from 3, where this starts, all the way back here to -5, that's a difference of 8. So if we go back 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that gives us the middle point. So that middle point is -1. So we know inside of our absolute value, we can write an equation that will make, if we plug in -1 for x, we get out 0. So that has to be x plus 1, because our middle should give us 0. And now we have to decide if we want to use less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Well, we don't have shaded circles, so that's less than or greater than. And then since it's in the middle, less than, that's an and problem, we just want to put less than. And then we have to figure out what our half of our distance is here. Well, we already did that. We counted 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is telling us we can go 4 units this way from here and 4 units back. So the correct answer for that one would be C. All right, so now we have to come up with an inequality here. X is less than 3 units away from 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw a number line and put 5 in the middle. 3 units above would be 6, 7, 8. 3 units below, 4, 3, 2. So we know less than doesn't have a closed circle, so we're going to put 2 open circles there, and it's telling us to shade in the middle. So we do the exact same thing. Here's our middle, it's 5. So write an equation that when we plug 5 in, we get 0 out, x minus 5, absolute value. It's an and problem with open circles, so just a less than. And we are 1, 2, 3 units away in both directions. So that means it needs to be less than 3. So the correct answer would be C. All right, so now we've got another absolute value inequality that we need to solve. So again, hopefully you're already starting on this. You need 2 inequalities. First one is just the exact same thing without the absolute values. The second one is when you flip the inequality and change the sign of everything on the other side of the inequality. 3x minus 2 is greater than -7. So now we can go through and solve these. We'll add 2 to both sides. We get 3x is greater than -5. Divide both sides by 3. X is greater than -5/3. So we know that's our lower bound there because we're moving up that way. Now with this one we need to add 2 to both sides. So we got 3x is less than 9. Divide both sides by 3. We get x is less than 3. So we know our solution has to range from -5/3 up to 3. And if we look at the inequalities there, A is the one that represents that. All right, with number 9, you really just have to read it. So if we look at this, the correct answer would be B, and that's because of a couple things here. A maximum of 60 minutes, and it says they have to play at least 40 minutes, and the other team has to be ahead at 10 points. So notice it said and, not an or. So we know it has to be in between 40 and 60 minutes, and the score has to be greater than or equal to 10. So the answer would be B on that one. All right, number 10 was asking you to decide which one was the correct solution. You could go through and write equations for each one of these, or you could just look at the options. So I looked at this and I said, okay, I know that the one that crosses at +1 on the y-axis, my blue line drawn here, has a greater than and equal to. So A cannot be that because it just says greater than. It would make that blue line a dotted line. Now with B, I know B is not correct because B says y is less than 2x plus 1, so that means it would be shaded below the blue line, but we're obviously shaded above the blue line. And now if I look at D, same thing on D, as y is less than or equal to 2x plus 1. It does have a solid line, but the less than means that it's shaded below the blue line, and we're not shaded below it, we're above it. So the correct answer has to be C. So I think it's easier sometimes with these multiple choice questions just to look at it and eliminate the ones you know are incorrect.